I was always an aeroplane nut. Started flying when I was 14. I eventually got my private at 17 before I learned to drive. Entrepreneurs and pilots are very optimistic people.
When you're a pilot, you obviously get some uncertain situations.
When it comes to planning, it's very much about planning for the what-ifs.
I've come to Biggin Hill Airport in South London to meet a pilot who's also a CEO. He runs Oriens Aviation, which has over 50 employees. Founded in 2015, the business sells private jets, but also maintains, charters and manages them for clients. The CEO I'm going to meet started flying aged 14 and got his private pilot license before receiving his driving license at 17. He likes to fly his personal plane on a regular basis for business. In fact, he's also a qualified aerobatics pilot of the NAT display team and known to do some loop-the-loops at air shows. I caught up with Brenninkmeyer inside one of the Pilatus PC-24 jets he sells as UK distributor. I wanted to find out what the business of aviation can teach us and what leadership skills he's picked up as a pilot. So how did you actually end up starting your own aviation business?
I'm very fortunate to be in this position. So it started, I come from a large family business of retailers. We also have venture capital as well. So I started my career in retail, then moved on to venture capital. So I learned a lot about entrepreneurship and businesses through venture capital. I was actually specializing in aviation in venture capital because that was my passion. Wasn't enough deal flow, so I started advising a lot of those entrepreneurs how they could pitch for investment, how they could write a business plan. And that was my consulting business that I set up after the venture capital business, which was really an opportunity for me to find an aviation business that I wanted to get involved in. And that's where I came across the opportunity with Pilatus, the OEM that we represent. So I set up that business in 2015. So 10 years ago, just celebrated our 10-year anniversary. Initially just myself and a sales guy. So we buy the airplanes from Pilatus at a wholesale price and we sell them at a retail price. 3 years later, bought a maintenance business and added the maintenance to our operation. Then we diversified with other manufacturers. So we started with Pilatus. We then diversified with Tecnam, who we found very innovative, very forward-thinking. And we also do factory authorized maintenance for the Cirrus product as well.
You're actually a qualified practicing pilot.
I was very fortunate that I had supportive parents, so I was always an aeroplane nut. Started flying when I was 14, which is the minimum age to log your flights at the time. I eventually got my private at 17 before I learned to drive. Then I learned to drive afterwards, and then I went on to get all my commercial licenses after that as well. And I did a little bit of freelance work for a charter company here in the UK, so that gave me some experience in business aviation, but I've always been a very passionate pilot.
So how many hours have you logged then?
I think I'm around 5,600 hours now. So yeah, I've got a few hours under my belt.
So does that in any way inform your leadership style?
Definitely, definitely. And there are lots of parallels. I think both entrepreneurs and pilots are very optimistic people. I think it comes with the territory. Whether it's the gift of flight or whether it's finding a new opportunity in the market, an entrepreneurial opportunity, you have to be an optimist, and pilots and entrepreneurs typically are optimists. Pilots temper that with very strong discipline, and I think that's an incredibly useful skill for entrepreneurship. So I always think of it: plan, brief, execute very procedurally, and the procedures and structure is based on a lot of prior experience from the industry, and then debrief. So that's really the steps, and I think you can apply that very much to business as well. So if we take each of those in turn, when it comes to planning, it's very much about planning for the what-ifs. And this is again is where the structure really helps the optimistic pilot. But of course, we've got to think, well, what if? What if the worst possible case scenario were to happen? What would we do? And of course, we train that and we rehearse it as pilots. And in business, you always think the same. You think, well, what if this doesn't work? What's my go or no-go decision point in the business? At what point in the business, if I'm making a decision, am I committed to doing something? At what point can I pull out? And how do I manage people's expectations along that process as well? So that's the planning stage. The briefing stage, communication is so important. So to have a vision and a plan and to clearly be able to brief customers, that's marketing, your team, that's leadership. The brief is very, very important to that. The execution, so I think both, entrepreneurs sometimes struggle with structure. I think being creative and wanting to, find new opportunities and structure don't always go hand in hand. And pilots love structure, and we love operating within a structured environment. And I found for me, so I've worked with various programs over the years to provide structured tools for entrepreneurs. I found that very, very useful. And again, this is based on a lot of experience from entrepreneurs in the past. Why reinvent the wheel yourself if other people have done it? And if there's a way to implement something and you have a proven way of doing it with a structure, that really helps. And then the debrief. I think at the end, it's very important to be humble. There's no room for people who don't have humility. You're going to make mistakes, you're going to learn. And I think in aviation, we have a very good culture around that, where, we'll actually want to say, well, this could have gone better, and we think there's a better way of doing this, and it would have been more safe to do it in this particular way. And we report that in aviation. There is a strong reporting culture, which benefits everybody else, benefits the industry, and makes the industry safer. And it's the same in business. If you've done something, even if you've done it very well, have the discipline to debrief after that project and say, well, this is where we shone, and we actually have a strength here, and we should do more of this. Or, this is perhaps where this is a non-strength, if you like, where, perhaps we need to manage that or think about it differently, or perhaps improve how we do it. But the debrief is absolutely critical as well.
When you're a pilot, you obviously get some uncertain situations sometimes. Do they become kind of leadership learning moments too?
I think as a pilot, you really are trained for everything. I mean, there are always unexpected situations when you fly. The weather changes, for example, you get different air traffic control routes, so you never get exactly what you plan for. So everything always changes in flight. But we're very trained to deal with them. And of course, the time you get everything thrown at you is when you're in the simulator, where you get every possible failure thrown at you and multiple failures all at the same time. And it's how you deal with it and how you react. And I guess that the learning for business there, which is an interesting one, I think, is unless you're on fire, sit on your hands. Don't start jumping around and, hands flailing around the cockpit doing things and touching switches. Just sit on your hands. Just wait. What's going on here? What's the emergency? It's the same in business. I think having the discipline, again, to just sit on your hands if things aren't going right, take stock, not react emotionally, but just take stock and wait, and actually force yourself to wait. You find that you approach the situation from a very different point of view without the emotion, and it's much more rational and calm approach.
Do you have any business lessons you can share from your sector?
Yeah, I wouldn't say particularly from aviation. I think this lesson comes from my background in the family business. We've been around for a very long time, since 1841. And then having seen the aviation industry as well, I'm very passionate about trying to define really what the purpose of business is. Why are we in business, and what's the reason for it? And I think the definition of business is a community of persons that creates real value to society, and that for me is the definition of business. That puts the person at the center of business. So the idea that the economy is for the people and not the other way around. It's putting the dignity of the human being. So the service that you create enhances society, human beings in society. And if you can do that in a way that enhances the learning of your employees and the people you work with to become the very best possible version of themselves, because they're working in that business to create that value, that for me is what business is all about. And that's the challenge. And it's also about long-term value creation as well. It takes time to build that up. It takes time to build up a reputation. Maybe especially in aviation, because aviation is relatively conservative. So it does take time. So it's having that long-term view and building long-term value creation. And I found that's really helped. If I'm not saying I'm successful at doing it, it's an enduring value, and we constantly have to work at it every day and improve. But I do find that trying to bring that culture into our business has actually attracted employees to us as well. And hopefully over time also will attract customers to us. They realize that's how we try to do things and place the customer at the heart of everything.